On January 2nd, 2025, I started a 90-day challenge that I haven't spoken about publicly until now. If you've been around the channel, you'll know that I typically work with and develop producers that are kind of already on their way, but this time I wanted to do something different. I wanted to see what would happen if I took a producer who was basically starting from scratch and tried to take their production from amateur to pro level in just 90 days. So I found a beginner producer who had no real direction, no brand, just a passion for music and really wanted to finally take this whole music thing seriously.
Being real, I was feeling very stagnant for like a hot minute, and I had like kind of fallen off of making music as regularly as I should be. Every time I would make music, it would come out okay. I just felt like I wasn't really getting anywhere, and it was kind of discouraging.
And after just 3 months, the growth was insane. He went from second guessing every single beat to producing industry level tracks. And now he's got the proper foundation to actually build a career making beats and producing artists. The real reason why I wanted to do this experiment was to prove that getting good at music production, getting good at making beats doesn't have to take like 10 plus years. There's too much noise online, man. People saying that you have to sacrifice everything and that you should have started when you were like 12 years old and that you're just too late. I just don't buy that, and I wanted to put that to the test. So in this video, I'm walking you through the step-by-step process I used to help level this producer up. No fluff, just a concrete roadmap that will get you real progress based on real results. And honestly, you'll be surprised by how not complicated this really is. So the producer is named Terrence. He's based in the US. He'd been making beats on and off for about 3 years, but like a lot of newer producers, he just felt stuck and had no real momentum. So he found me right here on YouTube. He filled out an application through my website. We hopped on a call, and right away, I knew what the first major challenge was going to be. And honestly, it's the same thing that holds so many producers back before they even really get started: a lack of time.
You know, I did manage to make music here and there, but I do think with being discouraged with it, it kind of forced me to procrastinate with music a little more, scrambled to make something, and then when I'm scrambling to make something, it wasn't really as good.
Terrence was working full-time in hospitality. On top of that, he had a gardening hobby that he was super passionate about, family responsibilities, daily errands, walking the dog, keeping fit, all the things that as adults takes up the majority of our time. Which brings me to step 1 of this whole process. We needed a clear and efficient plan for improvement. If Terrence was to go out there and try and master house one week, R&B the next, some weird ambient lo-fi drill fusion the week after, then he would just get overwhelmed and wouldn't see much or any progress. This is the biggest mistake I see newer producers make. So I gave Terrence one simple rule: focus on one genre. Now, we weren't just going to pick a random genre out of a hat. The genre had to tick 2 boxes. A, it had to build foundational skills that would carry over into other styles later down the line. And B, it had to be something that he was already passionate about, already trying to make, and was probably listening to as well. Now, after about 30 seconds, we found the perfect fit. Terrence was going to lock in on Detroit style beats. The next challenge was finding time for him to actually sit down and get better in such a short period of time. And this is where most new producers, myself included, back in the day, just kind of wing it. We make music whenever we can, in between school, late at night, maybe squeeze a beat in before we go to bed. And when you're young with barely any responsibilities, that schedule kind of works. But for someone like Terrence, that whole make beats whenever you get a chance just isn't going to cut it. He needed a system, something that would force his schedule to make space for music. And the best method I found for that is time blocking. Remember back in school how you had a timetable? First period math, second period English, then lunch, then gym, then science. You didn't have to decide what to do next, you just followed the schedule. That's basically time blocking, but now you're the head teacher of your own life. Trust me, I've done to-do lists, I've done notes on my phone, sticky notes, but time blocking is by far the easiest and the fastest way to actually manage your time effectively. So here's how we set that up for Terrence. First, we pulled up Google Calendar. It's free, simple. Then we blocked out the non-negotiable tasks, so sleep, work, chores, daily errands, stuff that really wasn't going to go anywhere in his schedule. We gave that one color. Next, we added his leisure activities, so walking the dog, doing his hobbies like gardening, family time, and that got a different color. And now the best part, we looked at all of the blank space he had left in his week, and that's why we blocked in focus time specifically for music production. No distractions, no multitasking, just time to create. And then we give that a nice bright color so it stood out. Once the calendar was filled out, he synced it to his phone, and then boom, he gets a little notification before each new task. Just like school, but now the bell rings for beat sessions instead of biology class. This whole time blocking setup takes 10-15 minutes each week, and now it's crystal clear as to when Terence had time to dedicate to making music. So with his schedule locked in, we were finally ready to take on the biggest challenge so far. The challenge that was going to make or break his progress, which brings me on to step 2. During our first call, we spent some time going through Terence's current catalog of beats. I like to do this with every producer I work with because it gives me a good idea as to what level they're currently working at and what we need to work on moving forward. Now, it became clear that there was a lot of gaps in Terence's production, from mixing, music theory, arrangement, sound selection. So we needed to get things moving and just work efficiently so that we could level up his production as fast as possible. I knew that with Terence's busy schedule, he couldn't waste time going down the traditional route. You know the one, endless tutorials, watching hours of videos, maybe picking up 1 or 2 things here and there, but forgetting them just as quickly. Terence just didn't have the time, so instead, I threw him straight into the deep end. I had him dig through his favorite tracks within that Detroit style, songs that actually inspired him, and I told him to recreate the instrumentals of those songs as closely as possible. Same tempo, same key, same melodies, bass line, drums, everything. Now, I know you might be thinking, what's the point in making a one-to-one copy of a song that already exists? Fair question, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to train his ear, to start hearing what makes that music work. The subtle choices in sound selection, the drum swing, the way things are layered, the arrangement. This kind of active learning is a game changer.
Hopping out the suicide doors, doing homicide. Hurt my upper silver spoon, I get his mama ride. Need at least the end to get my name on that dotted line. They keep asking about that last hop, oh, he not alive. I ain't took my wheel, still know how to drive.
Now, instead of him watching someone else explain music theory or sound design, he's actually learning it in real time. His brain starts to reverse engineer what makes them actually feel so good. And he'll start developing his own taste, his own internal reference for what great music actually sounds like. And that's what separates beginner producers from pros. Alright, so for context, we're about 40 days through this 90-day challenge, so almost halfway through. We really had to get things moving at this point. But now Terence was at a point where he could take all of those things he'd learned remaking those beats and start building his own sound. Step 3 was all about developing his individual skills across every element of production. Think of step 2 like going to the gym and copying someone else's workout just to see how it feels. Moving on to step 3, where you figure out why each exercise works so you can begin to tailor your own plan and actually start getting results. So at this point, I just told Terence, go away and make at least 3 beats within that Detroit style. No specific instruction, just cook up. I didn't want to hold his hand too much. I wanted him to really kind of figure out his own workflow and his own creative process. Then my job became simple, just listen, give feedback, and help him level up in each element. Week by week, we broke things down. Melodies first, we focused on things like call and response, adding textured layers, adding effects, mixing, keeping space for an artist to add their vocals. Moving on to drum and bass, sound selection was key, getting those drums to knock. Then arrangement, helping him tell a story through his beat, where to add drops, transitions, automation, all that good stuff. And finally, mixing, getting his beats to sound clean, clear, and competitive, to the point where you could play his instrumentals up against the pros and it would hold up type of competitive. this step is what most producers skip or never even reach. They learn how to make one type of beat from a few tutorials, then they move on to another type of beat and do the same thing. And sure, that might work for a while, but eventually they all hit a wall. If you don't understand why certain chords create specific moods, why some melodies feel more memorable than others, or how to balance elements in your mix, then eventually you're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks. But if you develop the fundamentals like I did with Terrence, then you can walk into any genre and not just copy the sound, but create freely. And that's when real growth starts to happen.
If I'm being honest, I think it did help me with like developing my own ideas, because when I'm looking back on it, I was listening to those songs so often, like listening to each individual part over and over and over again. When I was making it and I was looking at it, I was like, these are not even places that I would have originally thought to put anything in the first place. So when I was remaking the songs, it made it more evident that I'm not using enough of my tool. It helped me understand that you really can start placing things in a lot of other places, and it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of this one-dimensional way of doing something, and you can still find like a Detroit rhythm by throwing in, a clap on a different beat, or you can throw in a hi-hat in a different way or something like that, and it really opened it up for me, honestly.
All right, so we're now 70 days into this challenge and Terrence is pretty much in his bag at this point. But now it was time to push him out of his safe zone, enter step 4 of the process. So imagine you've been grinding the same mission in a game for weeks. Same map, same enemies, same rewards. Then you unlock a new level and you realize that you've already got the skills, you've got the XP, you don't need to relearn anything this time round, you just need to adapt to get past this level. That's exactly what I wanted to see with Terrence. See, mastering one style of production is cool, but I needed to see if everything we've been doing actually translated. Could he take the skills he'd been learning for the last 2 months and apply them somewhere else? Now, I wasn't going to have him make something completely different, like, go away and make some heavy metal or dubstep. It's kind of wild. Instead, I gave him the task of making something pretty close to, but still different from the Detroit style beat that we've been making up to this point. So I tasked him with making some experimental trap beats. So he went away, cooked up, and I can't lie, I was kind of shocked.
Keep sucking that dick like she wants something. Turn her on like she got a little hoe button. Why she fucking me back like a whore or something? Hit my phone and they talking about a war or something. Hey Ray, bitch, we finna get.
Well, I've been making the wrong genre this whole time. Yeah, this is insane, man. Now, this part of the process only took 2 to 3 weeks. It was intentionally short. We didn't need to spend weeks here because the point wasn't to master a new genre. The point was just to prove to Terrence that this whole process actually worked, that he could take the foundation he'd built and apply it to a different style of music. It's one thing to learn a skill, but if you can transfer it elsewhere, that's when you really start becoming a dangerous producer. And more importantly, it gave Terrence a massive confidence boost because now he wasn't just a guy that could only make Detroit beats. He was now a producer with a growing, flexible skill set.
I guess going through that and actually really getting good at that made me understand that I can take that into the other genres as well. So I would say, yeah. I feel like if it would have been scattered, it would have been a little more difficult. If I would have tried to jump around from like a slow style beat to a R&B to a lo-fi to a 200 BPM Detroit style beat, I would have been like all over the place. And I don't think I would have developed like you said, a workflow that made sense, because now I can take that similar workflow to the slow style beats or to whatever kind of beats that I want to make.
All right, so we're now approaching day 90, the finish line. Terrence had been through the gauntlet, remaking tracks, building foundational skills, and moving into different genres. But now it was time for the ultimate test. Step 5, get proof. Because yeah, having confidence is great, having a skill set is great, but at some point you have to step outside of the bedroom and actually go into the real world. It's like in high school, right? You spend weeks preparing for an exam, revising, but until you sit down, open that test and put pen to paper, you don't really know if you've got it. You don't know if it's in the bag. That's what this final step was for Terence. It wasn't enough for him to just feel confident. He had to prove it to himself and prove it to the market that he could actually deliver. So I gave him a mission: lock in an in-person studio session with a real artist. Most importantly, to walk away with a song. Now, luckily, from his on and off years of producing, Terence already had a few local connections. So he reached out to one of them, invited them to his home studio and got to work. And I'm very glad to report it was a win.
I was gassing it, bro. I was like, bro, I got some shit for you. Just wait till we get in the stew. It worked out very well. He's already putting together the album, and I'm like, goodness gracious. So he's been locked in. I do some quote unquote writing, you know what I mean? I'll throw in a word here and there or something like that, or throw in like how the flow goes or something like that. I will let him do his thing on like an ad-lib track, but me and him will both go through and be like, no, nah. I'll take things out too and everything. And the mixing of the beat and everything was just so much more on point. It feels a lot better, a lot more like actual music.
Then I turn over, look into your eyes, try to see your soul, baby. The way that you dance, it got me going crazy. When I see you on that pole, knew you was going places. You a lady in the street, but tonight you two-faced.
He's not just making good beats anymore, he's doing the job of an actual producer. In just 90 days, he went from casually making loops with no real direction to crafting his best music ever with the confidence to make a career out of it. But I won't lie to you, it wasn't always smooth sailing.
I remember messaging you and be like, bro, I cannot figure this out. I do think it was one of the remaking the beats. I think it was a melody for one of those remakes, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I hopped in a call with you, and you figured it out literally instantly without even doing anything. You're like, oh, it's these. And I was like, how did you even...
No, I think I remember that one. There were plenty of days where his confidence just dipped, where progress just felt slow and, things just weren't clicking. But that's normal. In fact, that's the whole point. See, one of the most important things Terence took away from this whole process was this one simple truth. If it's uncomfortable, you're growing. The only way to stay comfortable is to not grow. So when his mix fell off, he didn't panic. He just pulled up a reference track and tweaked it. When his melodies felt flat, he just went back to a mental checklist that we worked on. Is there call and response? Have I put ear candy in there? Have I used effects? And he just built them up. And over time, this process got easier and easier because he stuck with it when it wasn't. So now, day 90, Terence isn't just more skilled at making beats. He's actually a well-rounded producer worth his salt. And here's what he had to say for anyone who's thinking about doing this for themselves. How are you feeling with the outcome of the whole 90 days? The whole 90 days of us working together.
Well, the experience was really good, getting to learn and understand the tactics and understand kind of the direction not only you took, but, things that I can do for my beats and my future business or, anything like that. It really helped me kind of feel more as kind of like a more overall producer. I feel like I can just have studio sessions if somebody wants to bring in beats and just needs to be recorded and needs vocal production. I feel like I can make a beat for someone if they really need some beats. I feel like I can, pretty much be an all-around, well-rounded producer if anyone needs almost anything.
If you're someone who's into music production, maybe you're in that on and off phase and kind of lack direction, but you really want to take this seriously, then the link to my website is in the description. Feel free to reach out. And if you're not quite there yet, that's cool too. Click this video next where I break down the most important beat making lessons that I've learned in over a decade of producing.